now, and could be evening for a few folks. Welcome to our special webinar in honor, sort of World Mental Health Day. That was a few weeks back, but we definitely want to kind of focus a little bit on health today. So thank you for joining us today for this important and timely workshop. This session is particularly special as it is a time for us to reflect on, understand, and address mental health in our personal and professional lives. Again, I'm Jerome Wilhort. I'm a customer success coach at Culture Amp, and this is truly important to me as an advocate for mental health in not only the Black community, but just in the world of work in general.
Amazing. Thanks, Jerome, for starting this off. Hello, everyone. I'm Winnie. I'm a lead scientist here at Culture Amp, and it's important to me today because I like to think of myself as being an independent caretaker of my well-being. I do everything by myself, but we'll find out today the lesson for us is to lean into community and understand the benefits of community when it comes to mental health and care for ourselves. So today, someone's saying my audio is quiet.
Yeah, it's kind of popping in and out. If I don't know, you can try.
And let me just take out my
much better. That's much better.
Let me just go through this part.
No,
can you still hear me?
Now we can hear you. That's very clear. Sorry, everyone. We all know what the technical difficulties are like here in 2023. So, but yeah,
thank you. Thank you. We're going to delve into. Sorry, Jerome. I'm not sure if you paused me there.
When I think it's I'm still having trouble hearing you. I don't know if other folks can hear. Okay. I'll just Winnie, if give me a second here. I just kind of want to let people know. So Winnie is a people scientist at Culture Amp, and she was saying that this session is so important to her because she likes to think of herself as being an independent caretaker of her own well-being, with little need for help from others. However, as you know, we want to learn today, it helps to lean into community and the benefits of having others to lean on. So Winnie's going to start us off. Hopefully her connection gets a little bit better today, talking about the world of mental health through the lens of care work, inspired by a book written, excuse me, by a woman by the name of Leah Lakshmi Piepzna-Samarasinha. I can't. We'll put it in the chat. I'm terrible at it. It's a powerful book though called Care Work. We'll explore how that concept of care work differs from self-care and how it plays a crucial role in shaping mental health awareness and support in our workplaces and beyond. So I think Winnie may have a better connection now, but I'm going to talk about what we're going to go through here today. On the agenda, you can see on the slide, we kind of did our introductions. We want to define what care work is. And then, like I mentioned, we're going to talk a little bit about the difference between self-care and care work. Then we want to talk a little bit about mental health in the workplace. How are you able to ensure that you have a healthy, ensure that your mental health is protected in your workplace? And then we want to share back some collective wisdom and do some key takeaways. We may do some, we may do some breakout rooms, things like that, just to make sure everyone gets as much out of it as possible. Okay, so Winnie, we're going to try again.
Can we try this again? Can you hear me?
I can hear you much better.
Okay. And guys, please bear with me, or everyone, please bear with me. It may go in and out. Unfortunately, my connection in Ghana is not that stable. So anyway, we were talking about this transformative book called Care Work and Dreaming Disability Justice by Leah. And it offers so many insightful perspectives on disability, interdependence, intersectionality, care work, survival, and healing. Now, all of these concepts resonate profoundly when we are thinking about mental health and some of the work that we do here at Culture Amp. And just to contextualize it, when I think back on the layoffs that happened maybe 6 months ago at Culture, we created a temp channel. And in that channel, we could see manifestations of what care work is about, which was that people tended towards co-caring, offering co-advocacy. People really showed that they cared about what happened to the people who stayed and the people who left. So the question that comes to mind naturally is that as a subculture and in our internal communities, how do we care for each other proactively? And how do we find care work in our workspaces or in our professional lives? And that's what we're going to be talking about today. I do want us to move on to the next slide. And I want us to just have a bit of a reflection time. The question I want you to ask yourself is, when was the last time you thought confidently about telling someone that you needed help? So when I think of myself and why I said this was important for me, basically, when I say I need help, it's because it's come to the last resort and I definitely need that help. I don't feel comfortable saying I need help because I'm independent, right? Or that my support system is amazing. I don't really have a formal sense of what my support system is because it happens, ad hoc. And so I want you to think yourself and maybe put in the chat what you think about when you think of those statements. I need help. My support system is amazing. Pass it over to you for us to start into the session. And I want you to think about these two as we go on.
Yeah, that's great. Thanks, Winnie. I think Winnie, you're gonna talk a little bit about the mental health.
Oh, sorry. Yes. So, in the spirit of vulnerability, this is all a little bit sketchy on my end. So we're going to walk through this. So, as I was mentioning with those two statements, mental health for us, and hopefully the message that we get from this session today is that it's not merely an individual concern. It's a collective responsibility. And from the book, we understand that is an aspect of social justice that has been talked about over centuries, but not been formalized. So if we center mental health into the context of collectivity, it's about recognizing and honoring the diversity of our experiences and creating an inclusive, supportive environment for everyone. So talking about mental health, as the slide says, isn't an exercise of individuality, it's the collective experience. Now, today, through interactive discussions, we're going to map out our interdependence, so not independence, recognize the critical role that each of us play in our organizations and communities, and also brainstorm ways we can allow our workplaces to become inclusive, empathetic, and supportive of this mentality of care work. So the kind of changes that we're going to see will definitely not happen in this hour session, but it will be a start for us to be able to talk about I need help more confidently. We understand that, discussing mental health can bring up some personal and sometimes sensitive topics. So we want to encourage openness, but also respect for your privacy and your comfort levels. So we would like all of us to participate in these activities and discussion voluntarily and only share what we feel comfortable sharing. So over to you, Jerome.
Remember, the goal of this session is to foster a deeper understanding of mental health and to consider how we can co-create a workplace where everyone feels supported and valued. To start, let's define care work. In care work, the author emphasizes that care work is the labor of love, support, and care that is often performed within communities and relationships. It encompasses a wide range of activities, including emotional support, physical assistance, and advocacy for those who may be experiencing illness, disability, or other challenges. So in practical terms, care work can be promoting interdependence, It could be addressing systemic oppression, recognizing who is doing care work and identify it as a labor, and pivoting towards a collective awareness. Those are just some examples there of what actual care work can look like. So we're comparing and contrasting two critical concepts in our discussion about mental health in the workplace: self-care and care work. Self-care, as most of us know, is about taking an active role in maintaining our own well-being and happiness, especially during stressful times. It's getting massage, meditating, things like that. That's self-care. It's about setting boundaries, managing our stress, and ensuring that we're taking the time to rest and rejuvenate. This is the individual approach that we're used to hearing about. On the other hand, care work is the work, often unrecognized or undervalued, of caring for the well-being of others. This isn't just about physical care, it's about emotional support, navigating work structures, and creating an environment where others feel seen, heard, and supported. This is a collective approach we probably haven't heard as much about formally, but have some pull toward. What sets care work apart from self-care is its communal and collective nature. Care work is not centered solely on individual well-being. It's a practice deeply rooted in community support. It recognizes that the responsibility for care is shared among community members, friends, and loved ones. While self-care is important, we're not dismissing self-care. Care work broadens the scope to include the well-being of others within a community. Communities play a vital role in care work. They come together to provide care and support, particularly when traditional systems may fall short. Communities can engage in collective care, recognizing that everyone benefits when care is accessible and shared. We'll talk a little bit more about even more in depth about what care work can look like for you a little bit later on in today's conversation. Okay, but Winnie? I'm not sure when he's still on. So here are some examples of care work. Let's just reflect on the forms of care work that we are actively involved in. Recognizing care work is crucial as it highlights the invisible labor that often goes unnoticed in communities. So as you see on the screen, we've got some examples there, and I'm just curious if you could throw in the chat, which forms of care work are you currently involved in? Offering emotional support to a friend who is going through a difficult time. That's a form of care work. We just think of that as friendship, but that is a form of care work. Providing physical assistance to a family member with a disability. Advocating for equitable healthcare access for a marginalized community. Creating safe and inclusive spaces for those who have been historically marginalized. Which forms of care work do you see happening at work? And I'm a little bit curious, just from my own knowledge, if you all have ERGs that focus on in your workplaces, if you have employee resource groups that focus on those types of care work as well. Right, Winnie, if you are still there, I wanted to throw it back to you to talk a little bit about the Black community, mental health in the workplace, specifically for the Black community. Can you hear me, Winnie?
I can hear you. My internet just dropped off. Sorry, guys.
Okay, that's okay.
Okay, so this is a part that I'm particularly interested in because again, it's relevant to the intersectionality conversation that we were having. So in Black communities, until recently, we know that mental health was a largely ignored topic, and it was more evident in our workplace discussions. This is something that we saw in culture as well. And the reasons why this is a problem is because it can be dated back to social attitudes and norms that have historically shaped our work environments. So firstly, one of the things that we know is that we've been penalized or we've been encouraged to put away mental health issues within our communities, and this has also spilled into the organization. When we think about how socially we've thought about mental health, people were put away into asylums because of mental illness. So it permeates every part of how we thought about mental health. And this meant that instead of addressing things openly, there was a tendency to hide or dismiss them. which then perpetuates stigma and misunderstanding. So if we go back to that sentence, I need help, you may not recognize that you're not confidently saying you need help because you've internalized this aspect of putting away and sort of dealing with things yourself. Secondly, there was a tendency for us to downplay the prevalence of mental health issues because we either ignored or minimized these problems. So workplaces were able to sidestep the need for substantive support and accommodation, which has also left people struggling in silence. Now, when I think about the support system statement, this, for example, in the workplace means that when you actually need to take time off work, you find it hard to say you do because you need to find justifiable excuses to basically say you need the time and you need the support. And that's where we talk about care work coming into place over self-care. Next thing is that in the workplace, we've also seen that it's been historically male dominated, which cultivated a low affect culture. This means that we have low displays of emotion, stereotypically associated with women, and it's been discouraged for us to show emotions that were out of the professional realm. For example, I felt anxiety of my internet failing me, and then it was happening. But we have a supportive environment, and I hope this is also a supportive environment where these sorts of vulnerabilities can be shown and that we have a safe space to be able to show that. Now, there has been a shift in these conversations because following the pandemic, there's been a conversation towards showing that organizations care about mental health at work. And this includes things like the remote work policies that we've seen, conversations about isolation, increased stress, and these concerns have been brought to the forefront. So following the pandemic, what we've understood is that mental health issues go across the spectrum of intersectional concerns or categories. But for us Black people specifically, there are specific nuances in how organizations may deal with stigma or minimizing problems or the systemic and institutionalized versions of the issues that I've talked about that we will address today. Before we do that, I did want us to go through our icebreaker session, come off mute and talk about what we've heard so far. So if we move on to the next slide. A couple of questions, and now that you've got a basic understanding of care work and how it differs from self-care, I wasn't able to catch everything that Jerome mentioned, but I'm quite sure you've understood the differences. Let's dive deeper into, the concept through an interactive activity. So the activity of self-care, and
Winnie, I think you may be breaking up a little bit here again, so I'm gonna just hop in and just kind of talk about what we see here as our icebreaker slides. Definitely would love to have people. I think when you said I'd love to have people come off mute, maybe turn on their camera and share their response to some of these icebreaker questions. Oh, there you are, Winnie. Sorry, Winnie. Okay. All right. So yeah. So I'm going to pose a series of questions to the group, and I invite each of you to share your thoughts and experiences. Feel free to unmute yourself or use the chat feature to participate. There are no right or wrong answers here. We just are here to learn from one another. So yeah, let's just kind of walk our way through each one of the questions. So when you think of self-care, what comes to mind? And how do you prioritize it? So we talk a little bit about examples of self-care, where you're kind of focusing inward, making sure that you kind of take that time for R&R, rest and relaxation, maybe get a massage, maybe meditate, things like that. What comes to mind for you when you're thinking of self-care? Anyone can feel free to drop something in the comments or come off.
I definitely think, it's been said, but a massage or a haircut or going to get my nails done is something that it's me time, and you get to sit there, and even though it's not directly meditation. It's quiet time for me, and I just get to relax and just unwind.
Yes, I love that word, me time. Right.
Yeah, I'd like to contribute a little bit to this. I guess for me, care time is like going back to my roots as someone who works away from home, going back home to my home country, spending time with my family, immersed within my language, my culture, and my food. That feels like care time for me.
Absolutely. Doesn't it feel like you it's almost like recharging your batteries there?
Yes, definitely.
Yeah. Don't understand that. Maybe one more person on this question.
Okay, sorry, Jerome, can I go? I'm trying to find the icon to put up my hand, but I can't see it.
Yeah, please
Can
go.
I go? Just quickly for me, because I recognize this looks different for everybody, but ultimately self-care for me is beyond those massages and bottle of Chardonnay. Ultimately for me, and I think for most people, it would involve establishing healthy boundaries. It involves doing that hard work that we tend to avoid. So that might look like having some therapy. It might look like separating and having, leaving loved ones even, getting rid of those toxic relationships. So that's what it is for me anyway. Thanks.
Maz, while you're off mute, I was wondering if we could can you tell us how you're involved in care work or how you benefited from care work?
Yeah, I work in I'm a adult mental health social worker. I have been working for the local authority in mental health services for the last 15 plus years. So I'm very mindful that we as workers, we're not so good at looking after ourselves, but we look after others all the time, and we're self-sacrificing. So yeah.
And I asked Maz that specifically, but if we could keep going, yeah, if anyone can tell us how they're actively involved currently in care work or how you may have benefited from care work. Remember some of the topics we mentioned with care work could be, just kind of being there for a coworker, being there for a friend, helping someone.
I'd like to call out Katie, who I think spoke at the beginning, but we work together. Self-care for us, we have a team of young people, and we have a varied range of mental health issues. And similar to what Maz said, I think it's actually all of those things. So it's the personal boundaries, it's understanding people's cultures, drivers and values, what self-care means to them as an individual, and then hopefully providing that space. And Maz, I very much identify with what you said for me, but I know for some of the young people that I work with, they're not that far across that journey. So understanding, is it what Katie said, which is some real switch off pamper time, or is it going home and kind of really connecting with your roots, or is it really thinking about the way that you move through life, and what values you move through with, and what your boundaries are. And I think it's different for everybody in our team, and trying to understand that from a manager's perspective can be quite difficult.
Definitely. So do you think when it comes to care work, ideally maybe there could be like a bank of resources that are available to everyone?
Most definitely. Some of the stuff that Katie and I have had to battle through with very little support over the last 6 months has been unreal. So we've had a person in the team who's got cancer. We've had somebody in the team who's been diagnosed with ADHD and has repetitive thoughts and struggles with those at work. We've had somebody who was showing sexual predator behavior. So we've had a lot of things to deal with, and that's been really tough. At the same time, I've been going through a period of stress and insomnia. So it's been really, really interesting as to how we navigate through it.
And I think that's an important thing, again, where like employee resource groups come in, or you as individuals or advocates for others can come in and help bridge that gap between the individual and maybe human resources, or the individual and the therapist, to kind of help get them. That's what care work looks like to me, is helping people either with the help that they need, or help bridging the gap between them and whatever that resource is that is there for them. All right, and last question here. What have you learned from this discussion today? Has anyone learned anything? Again, feel free to come off mute. Feel free to type it in the chat if you'd like to.
Yeah, I'd like to contribute. I think what we've all seen, especially in the chats and from the conversation, is that it looks very different from everyone. Care work or the kind of care that they apply to themselves. So I guess more than what I've learned, it would be interesting to know how the team at Culture Amp managed to like sort of make a cohesive environment to ensure that people with different needs can get the care within their workspace.
That is awesome. Ramona, we're going to try, we're holding some space for Q&A for the last 20 minutes. So rather than step on anyone's time now, I'd love for you, I would love it if we could capture that question that Ramona just asked, and we can address that, make sure that we kind of push that to the side for myself and Winnie to answer later during our time, and just make sure that we have enough time for everyone to answer questions from your side for now. But we will definitely answer that, Ramona. That's a great question. Anyone else? Any thoughts on what you've learned today?
I'm going to use this as a test to see if my internet doesn't create a disappearing act.
Yes.
But I think from what I've heard, especially what Maz shared, and I think Sophia was sharing as well, everyone is going through stressful times, and some of us have the courage to bring it to the forefront, right? We either share it with friends or we may share it with managers, etc. But sometimes it feels like the bridge in between what you can do yourself to help yourself and what others need to do for you to help you can sometimes be fuzzy, and we don't always have either formal structures in place, either at work, to do this, or we do have them, but we also have that internalized fear of asking those questions. And in the book, one thing that I really caught was that there are people who would actually send out like Craigslist type help questions to ask people to help them with a disability or to help them with how they're facing anxiety, etc. And so if there's something that I'm learning, it's basically being able to go beyond myself for help and look out for those opportunities to give others for care work, and how I can also be an advocate for care work. So hopefully that's something that resonates with everyone as well.
Absolutely. All right, so we'll kind of wrap that up and move on here. And Winnie, I'll let you go, kind of, I think you wanted to go through here what workplaces can do.
Yep. And on point, Ramona's asked the question about, workplaces, what Culture Amp does. So we'll start off with recognizing that both individual and collective responsibility play vital roles in promoting mental health, right? Individual responsibility would be about taking care of your own mental health through self-care, as we talked about, seeking for help when you need it, and recognizing your personal boundaries. However, we should acknowledge that the significance of collective responsibility is within our communities, and this means that our workplaces are also communities where we need to find this. So the first thing that we can look out for is employee resource groups, which Culture Amp has. So if we click, we should come up with the employee resource group tab. Employee resource groups, especially ones that cater to specific categories or protected characteristics, should be there in and set up in a way that promotes emotional support, offers practical guidance, and allows for feedback for professional growth. A tangible example of how that looks like in Culture Amp is that when the series of oppressive activities happened across the globe, especially from a police brutality perspective, we basically rallied together and had listening sessions, had sessions where we shared not only our feelings about this, but what we could do moving forward. We've also provided each other with practical guidance about what to do after layoffs within the organization, and also what to do about career growth. And I think these conversations, especially when it comes to the Black campus within Culture Amp, has really been beneficial in allowing us to connect with the bigger picture of what the company is trying to do from a diversity perspective. The next thing that organizations should invest in is creating intentional safe spaces. And what do we mean by this is that within conversations such as one-to-ones with managers, or within meetings where someone is sharing, issues that they're facing, or mental health problems that may arise, it's really important to ensure confidentiality so that people don't feel like what they say is going to be shared with other people. Also, when we're given feedback, we train our managers to make sure that people don't feel that their feedback or about the organization and the measures it can take to support them will be seen with punishment, but rather it would be seen as growth opportunities, and that leaders should be models of feedback acceptance. I remember when I went through a similar episode of really feeling anxious about my performance and speaking to my manager about it. It didn't feel as though I would be met with a wall or defensiveness. It felt that I'd be able to have that discussion and have next steps drawn out with me, and that's exactly what happened in that time that happened. The next thing that we could look out for as well is community-based support, i.e., how does your organization partner with other mental health support systems that offer regular workshops on mental health, and offer workshops that have representatives that share your challenges. So we see this a lot when it comes to the intersectionality of race and gender, or race and sexuality, where sometimes the conversations don't quite hit the nail on the head because we don't quite have a representative who lives our similar experiences. And so when we're offering those sorts of support systems, these are some of the considerations that we want to make. And in link to this, the last hub is looking at cultural and spiritual acknowledgement. We talk about I can't say the word, intersectionality, and it normally looks at race, gender, and sexuality. But underpinning all of that is also cultural and spiritual belief that people have in the way that they express their identities. And we find that, especially when it comes to mental health and the Black community, our cultural influences and our spiritual influences also dictates how we deal with mental health. And I want you to put in the chat how you think this looks like in your own life. We want to make sure that those conversations are far radiating. In Leah's book, this is one of the things that are pinpointed out, that care workspaces should also really take into account that if your friend is telling you that they're going to pray about something, we don't roll our eyes at it. We support them, and we also give them opportunities to maybe seek things that we think will also tangibly help them. And this is one of the areas that we rarely talk about when it comes to the support that workplaces can give or workplaces can acknowledge. And so on that note, we're going to close off, and I will pass on to you, Jerome.
Well, thank you so much for that, Winnie. To sum it all up, there are three main focal points around navigating mental health. One, and this we talk about it a lot in terms of Culture Amp, at Culture Amp, but this resonates a lot for the Black community in general, and hopefully you can take this and implement it at your workplace as well. But number one, interdependence. Let's lean in on each other. We all depend on each other and should honor this mutual reliance in our communities and workplaces. Mental health is a collective experience and responsibility. Next is care work, care for thy neighbor. Care work is often undervalued and underpaid, should be recognized and honored as a vital part of our workplace. Again, mental health is a collective experience and responsibility. And then lastly, intersectionality. There isn't one specific form of oppression. There are various layers, especially in a work setting. We all know that some people deal with multiple forms of oppression, multiple forms of possible discrimination. So, it's an extra true in the context of work settings where minority groups have been historically excluded from full participation. So that is just definitely an important part of recognizing what is necessary to be a care work champion in the workplace. So I think we do have some resources for you, but I think and I don't know, we can go through those if you want to, Winnie. You can kind of explain what those are, definitely. But we're almost like right on at 40 minutes, so we can go through this last slide of resources if you want, and then we'll open up the floor for Q&A.
Yeah, so I think we should do that. So in terms of the key takeaways, as Jerome has mentioned from the previous slides, we want to move from independent to interdependence. We want to think about care work in a tangible way. And we also want to make sure that we're thinking of the layers of intersectionality that plays into how we look at care work. So the first thing that we can do is to advocate for mental health awareness and accessible resources within our communities, and community includes your organization as well. You want to encourage stigma-free conversations about mental health among friends and families. And we also want to support community organizations that focus on mental health and well-being. And so, for example, Culture Amp uses Modern Health to ensure that, our campus have access to, therapy, have access to any sort of coaching that is required to be able to help us deal with our mental health problems, issues, challenges. And then the last thing is to personally educate ourselves about the unique mental health challenges faced by different communities. Sorry, I had so much shouting. But this is all something that I think we can practically do. And once we are able to sort of shift our attention from just self-care and to care work, I think we may find that when we say the sentences, I need help, or my support system is amazing, we will feel confident about it. So thank you so much for listening, and we will be open for questions now.
Hi, Winnie. Hi, Jerome. So we have our first question. How does Culture Amp create an environment that encompasses all the different kinds of care for all the different needs that the team would require?
We kind of unintentionally already answered that question a little bit, but just to kind of reiterate what Winnie spoke about is kind of one of the first steps is to have the employee resource groups. And we have employee resource groups that are focused on all types of things, from campers with disabilities, which is the employee resource group board that I sit on. I know Winnie in the past has been on the board of directors for Camp Culture, which is for BIPOC campers. Then we also have things like Camp Care Bears, where people that care for a child or a parent or something like that come together. So we have a wide variety of employee resource groups that kind of act as that initial just kind of group place that allows people to know that there are others like you out there that are doing what you do on a daily basis, and in both work and outside of work. They're dealing with what you're dealing with. And then additionally, as Winnie mentioned, we work in conjunction with an organization, I guess, company called Modern Health that provides services, that provides therapy services, life coaching services, things of that nature. I know like all people leads go through specific, sensitivity training, diversity and inclusion training. Any big things I'm forgetting, Winnie? I don't know if you can hear me. I think that's
I think her internet may have dropped out. We've got a few more as well. So one is, what does Culture Out recommend for managers if employees within their team are feeling burnt out or feeling unheard?
Sorry, can you repeat that last part of the question? So
Yes, no,
how's
cool.
culture? Yeah.
What does Culture Out recommend for managers if their employees are feeling burnt out and unheard within the workplace?
Right. I think there are two things that we need to differentiate, which is that managers need to have the training to be able to have conversations about burnout. So in the first place, can they identify burnout, and can they create a safe space for them to have conversations about burnout? But burnout is also something that is beyond the professional capacity of a manager. So if it's something that can be handled within the policies of the organization to, let's say, talk about taking time off work, um, or being able to maybe talk about this with the HR team and find ways of working that works for the individual, then yes. But I think the bigger investment is for organizations to be able to allow managers to identify, have those conversations, and then also offer external help for those employees. And so on two fronts, I think one is the training for the manager, and the second is, do we have external resources? Do we have policies in the organization in place? We do have sick of leave absences that are available for people who see that, you know, burnout is an issue for them and would like to take that opportunity. There's sabbaticals that can be taken. And so there are a few policies in place to be able to mitigate that. But I think the most important thing is that where there's burnout coming out from, let's say, work overload, then that's also something that needs to be addressed. And so I think depending on the factors that have contributed to burnout, Culturum typically has a variety of avenues for us to have those conversations. I hope that answers your question.
That's brilliant. Thank you. Jerome, did you have anything to add to that at all?
No, I'm not a people leader, so I don't really know. I don't.
No worries
Perfect.
at
That was the
all.
answer.
So the next question is, in your personal experience, have you seen that hybrid working and flexibility within the workplace has a positive impact on mental health of employees and their productivity?
I would say for me, yes, definitely. Now I'll start off with what's missing, and then I'll talk about the positives of it. Now I do think that interconnectivity of just being around other humans, for lack of a better word, other like-minded humans that are going through the same experience as you, I do think that is missing somewhat, and it feels a little bit forced sometimes when we do create situations where we are getting together. But that being said, well, and I think you kind of miss a little bit of the whole water cooler conversations. You kind of used to have a little bit more insight on the organization, and had that ability to kind of connect with people that are outside of your immediate team a little bit better. So those are the things that I think are missing. However, I think giving adults the choice is critical. Giving people that can make decisions for themselves the ability to make the decisions for themselves is a critical component to me. And I think that outweighs and trumps any of the negatives that could have ever happened from the switch to hybrid or completely remote work. We all would love to have those happy hours on Thursdays after work, but some people just have other things that they have to do in their life. They may need to take their child to the doctor, and it rather than having to take the day off. And we always saw that affected us marginalized communities more, because it having to take that day off from work to, go pay a ticket or to take your child to work or things like that, always had a, it always had a bigger effect on marginalized communities. So I think it's extremely advantageous for us as adults to be able to make these decisions on our own and to determine how we want to spend our time. And if you can just trust me that I will get my work done, if you can trust that I'll put my 8 hours in, it may not be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 hours consecutively, but it may be 2 hours here, a 2 hour break to do what I need to do, and then 6 hours there. If an organization should be able to trust adults to do that. So that's the positive change that I've seen coming out of the pandemic and in this new world of work that we live in. Winnie, I don't know if you had anything to add there. I kind of rambled for a long time, so.
No, I think what you said is pretty comprehensive. I think the positives for me outweigh the negatives in that flexibility is king for me, and being able to come into work when it's sunny and stay at home when it's raining, for me is just summarizes it all, right? But there's also the aspect where I work in a cross-functional team, and sometimes as Jerome said, the interconnectivity piece does play on how isolated I might feel. And if I were to be, let's say, a more extroverted person, that may not necessarily be the best, form of working for me. But as I said, flexibility is king. And so if we can trust adults to make those decisions, then I think there's more of a positive there than to force everyone into a square peg or a round peg.
Yeah, I will say, and just like complete disclosure and kind of being completely vulnerable here, one thing I do as an employee miss is I don't know, just those meetings. And when you're walking through an office, just so everyone knows, I'm a customer success manager, so I'm customer facing. We work at a tech company. I don't typically have virtually the opportunity to connect with a lot of our more tech people on our team. Whereas in person, you'd be making a cup of coffee at the same time, or you'd be heading towards the restroom at the same time, and you would generate that conversation. And I do think that literally helped me in my career, to help me progress my career. And I do find that component is missing, and that is something, I have to figure out another way around that. But like you said, when flexibility is king, but I just think that's important to acknowledge that there is that trade-off. Like you don't have that ability to as easily build relationships with interdepartmental teams that is it interdepartmental teams. All right, Aman, were there any other questions, Aman?
Yes. So we have, how do you address stigma on mental health in the workplace and what steps to take?
Would you like to take that first, Lenny?
Yeah, I think part of it is just related to some of the opportunities that workplaces have to talk about mental health in general. So the first thing is obviously education. In our stand-up on Monday in EMEA, we talk about what everyone has done over the weekend, and a leader who talks about it most times will talk about something personal that they've done, or something that caused them stress during the weekend, and then everyone in the chats basically shares how great the weekend was or things like that. And I think just having such an open space for everyone to talk about them as a human being fosters an environment where stigma in and of itself is disarmed, right? So there's that informal part of it, and then there's the formal part of it where we actually have workshops where we talk about mental health. And so this version of this workshop was actually run internally before we run it here. And these are one of the ways where we can destigmatize the conversations about mental health. The other thing is care work, which is the peer support. So in camp culture, you know, I've got a relationship with Jerome, I've got a relationship with Tanisha, and whenever we jump on a call, like the first 5 minutes is basically us talking about how life sucks sometimes or how life is great. And I think these are ways that we are able to have that care and peer support for each other. So I think with 3 things that I've mentioned, we should be able to go through that.
I think
Sorry, I'm muting because of the noise in the background.
oh no, it's okay. It's okay. I think one of the best ways that any individual can address any stigma towards mental health in the workplace is to bring up mental health in your workplace. Because trust me, there are 50 people around you that want to talk about it, that are afraid to bring it up, and that are afraid of the stigma. But I guarantee you, if you bring it up and if you take it head on, that will just open the door for so many other people to become comfortable having those conversations as well.
That's incredible. Thank you so much, both. I believe that is all of our questions for today. And I wanted to thank you so much for your time. So, seeing as we've got a final 5 minutes, I'll hand back to you both for any closing words that you may like to share with our community.
Yeah, first of all, thank you all so much for joining. Thank you for the amazing questions. This is something that I love to do. I love talking about mental health in the workplace. I love talking about mental health in the Black community and what we can do to all live, our best lives, and focusing on our mental health, our self-care, but then that care work in a broader sense is going to be are all going to be really important things that we need to focus on and work on. So thank you for joining and learning more about this session. I myself am on a journey, so I don't know it all. I don't have the answers to anything, but if you do ever have a question, maybe I can assist in getting you to the right person, some expert like Winnie maybe that can help get you there. Winnie, expert, over to you.
Since this is a safe and open space, expert makes me feel like I've got performance anxiety. No, right. Let's talk about it. I love talking about mental health because I think, obviously, from a psychological perspective, it makes up our living experience every day. You wake up and you think about, do I physically feel well? Do I mentally feel well? And so I think for me, if there's anything that you can take away, first of all, it's can I ask for help? Can I ask other people to help me? And can I be that help to other people too? Knowing the community that I come from, you probably are involved in helping others. I help my family in a lot of ways, but you probably don't receive it back in equal measure. And I think one of the things that we can do is start advocating for ourselves to make sure that care work is coming the other way towards us too. And professionally speaking, we want to dismantle this aspect of pushing away. And I want to invent a word, asylumizing our own care, and making sure that our organizations are also held responsible for our care too. So that's what I would want to end with. Thank you so much for bearing with me.
Thank you.
Brilliant. Thank you again, both. So
thank you for having us.
Thank you so much. And to you and everyone from Culture Amp for this session. Please keep a lookout for the follow-up email as well as a survey, which will pop up at the end of this call. We'd really, really, really appreciate it if you could complete that for us. Also, join our new career advancement platform, Javelin. Javelin connects you to opportunities and resources based on your personal goals, all in one place. Thanks again, everyone, for joining, and thank you, Jerome and Winnie. That's been absolutely incredible. I enjoyed every moment of it, and I hope that you all have a lovely rest of your week.
Take care, everyone.
Thank you so much.